You can see table 13.1 in your book for more information about Erikson's stages of adulthood. So, we did discuss identity versus role confusion in adolescence. However, certainly as society has shifted and we now have emerging adulthood and people are taking a little bit longer to determine their identity, or maybe you've created an identity and then you hit middle age and you realize, I don't like what I'm doing, and maybe you go back to school or you go, change careers or something. These concerns that we have are lifelong. So our identity really combines our values and traditions from childhood with our current social context. So the contexts do keep evolving, so we often will end up reassessing our identity. There's several ways in which we do this. So vocational or your work identity, you may find yourself um, questioning your religious identity, your political identity, your sexual identity. There's all kinds of identities that we hold and that may change over the lifespan. Intimacy versus isolation. So generally humans, but also adults, are seeking intimacy, which is a close reciprocal connection with another human being. Now, that certainly does not mean a romantic connection. This could be platonic, friendship. We're just seeking out our people, really. So, adults do need to devote time and energy to one another. So, this intimacy is mutual. uh, the process begins in emerging adulthood and really continues lifelong. Isolation is especially likely when divorce or death disrupts established intimate relationships. You may see through things like that a change in friends or family. There's a lot that can go on there, and anything that really shakes up the routine, you may see a change in intimate relationships. Generativity versus stagnation. Adults need to care for the next generation, either by raising their own children or mentoring, teaching, and helping others. Erikson's first description of this stage focused on parenthood, but later he included other ways to achieve generativity. Adults extend the legacy of their culture and their generation with ongoing care, creativity, and sacrifice. I also think of generativity in the economic sense. This is really a time, adulthood is really the time when we see people generating and being part of the social structure at its peak. So we're typically making the most money we'll ever make in adulthood. Maybe looking for ways to move up in our business, whatever that is. Really kind of just looking for ways to continue being productive and generative rather than kind of stalling. And then integrity versus despair. When Erikson reached his 70s, he decided that integrity, with the goal of combating prejudice and helping all humanity, was too important to be left to the elderly. He also thought that each person's entire life could be directed toward connecting a personal journey with the historical and cultural purpose of human society, the ultimate achievement of integrity. We'll look at Maslow's stages on the next slide. So this is Maslow's hierarchy. It's really kind of like a ladder. So once a person starts at the bottom, they have this basic needs for survival, need for food, drink, shelter, these really basic needs that we all have. Once you have that taken care of, then you're going to move to the next rung. So now my priorities, I have all my other basic physiological needs met. So now I need to work on being safe and secure, being protected, defended, maybe moving to a safer neighborhood, etc. And then once I have that managed in my life, then I can start looking for this love and belonging, being a part of a group, etc. Once I have that taken care of, I can start working on esteem, being respected, successful, admired, getting that promotion, because I'm not worried about these other things at the bottom. And then self-actualization, so just all the extra things, once you are kind of set. A lot of people don't ever meet self-actualization. We kind of stay in number 3 or 4. Also, I think this is somewhat reminiscent of the scarcity concept. If you've heard of that and understand that, basically, some people, if they're in this basic survival mode, it's really hard to see some of the other things in life, some longer term benefits and things, because you're not worried about your esteem or love. You're worried about some basic necessities. So this is really kind of similar concepts. You may have heard of the Big Five personality traits. You can see the word ocean spelled out, and that's used as a memory aid to remember the Big Five traits, which are openness. Basically, you're imaginative, curious, artistic, creative, open to new experience. Conscientiousness, organized, deliberate, conforming, self disciplined. Extroversion, outgoing, assertive, active. Agreeableness, kind, helpful, easygoing, generous. Neuroticism, anxious, moody, self punishing, and critical. And they see that with the Big Five, you can really be kind of low on in each of these, or high on each of these, or somewhere in between. So you may either be more open, or less open, and you can kind of see this in some different things we'll look at a little bit on the next slide. Interestingly, if we see a big shift in our personality, it's typically going to occur earlier in life or later in life, not generally in the middle. We tend to have stable personality traits throughout the majority of our life. The hypothesis that individual personality traits originate in the brain was tested by scientists who sought to find correlations between brain activity, which you can see here in red, and personality traits. People who rated themselves high in four of the Big Five, so conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, but not openness, also had more activity in brain regions that are known to relate to those traits. You can see 2 side views on the left and a top and bottom view on the right of brains of people high in neuroticism. The brain regions known to be especially sensitive to stress, depression, threat, and punishment are going to be those yellow bullseyes. They were more active than in the same brain regions in people low in neuroticism. In every culture, marriage has become less common than it used to be. It's certainly more desirable in theory than it is in practice. We see, even with the people who are getting married, there's very high divorce rates. Many people are foregoing marriage and just cohabitating. This is particularly common in times of economic crisis. More people tend to live together. Also living apart together. So this would be a couple who typically are married but maintain separate residences and activities, but they are monogamous. I've actually seen several instances of this. So it wouldn't be so Scott, my husband, and I lived apart for several months while I was still in Richmond, and he got a job and moved to DC, and we maintained separate residences. This is not really living apart together, because we had planned the whole time to move back in together. Living apart together is more long term. It's when you have a mutual agreement that you will maintain these separate residences. Um, I know people who are married who she lives in Utah, he lives in New York. Another couple, she lives in Wisconsin, and oh gosh, he's now overseas. Um, and they stay married. They are happy. They are monogamous. They're in a committed relationship, but they just realize that living together wasn't best practice for them. So it's more of a continuous plan that people have, that consciously live apart. I also know people who live apart, like in the same neighborhood. I have some friends in Utah. They live across the street from one another, and they maintain their own households. So it's really just a conscious decision between two people who are in a committed relationship. Robert Sternberg calls these three aspects of love the triangular theory of love. Basically, you can understand love as part of three components that form these vertices of a triangle. The triangle is used as a metaphor rather than a strict geometric model. These components, as you can see, passion, intimacy, and commitment, each component manifests a different aspect of love. Intimacy refers to the feelings of connectedness, closeness that you get in loving relationships. Passion refers to the drive that leads to romance, sexual consummation, physical attraction, etc. And then commitment is really this decision to commit to one another, so to maintain that love. Decision and commitment don't necessarily go together. You can decide to love someone without being committed to the love in the long term, or you can be committed to a relationship without acknowledging that one loves the other person in the relationship. Changes with a step parent family should be easy to see, even if you haven't gone through it yourself. The changes are disruptive. So not only are you starting a new relationship as an adult with your new partner, but now you are bringing kids into the picture. So maybe I'm bringing kids from a previous relationship. Maybe you're bringing kids from a previous relationship. We may both be bringing kids from a previous relationship. We may be bringing animals into the picture. We maybe come from different parenting styles. We maybe come from different discipline styles, etc. Like, we could just go on. And you have to learn how to merge those relationships and make concessions and really start to understand each other. So there's a lot of patience needed, and a lot of changes that you'll see kind of at this time. The average age of new stepchildren is 9 years old. So children are typically pretty strongly connected to their biological parents at this time. So it is sometimes hard for the new step parent to come in and have a positive impact with the kids.